lineup that we have this year. Actually, why don't I flash it real fast for everyone just so we
Yeah.
have a chance to see it here.
And while you're doing that, I just want to welcome welcome a new person to our team, Tom Fiuta, uh, who'll be helping us throughout the season. Tom, thank you very much. We really appreciate you helping this year with all of this.
Yeah, Tom, thanks a lot. Tom's been a huge help on a number of different fronts, including on all of the
Thank you.
Got One stuff.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks,
Well,
buddy.
Yeah, huge on that one.
Just so everyone sees it, this is our lineup for the year. We're gonna start tonight with our friends Tony Friedrich and Cody Rubner from Saltwater Guides Association. On February 11th, we have David Nelson from Squimpish Flies. David, I don't know about you, but I've been tying with his materials a lot in the
Oh
last.
my God, all winter. Here's one of mine
Yeah, beauty.
right there. And we have a little announcement to make about that
Yeah.
in a minute. Yeah.
We've got a real OG pioneer, Dan Blanton. Any
Yeah.
of you who fish the Whistler flies or the Sarmal Mac,
Or the
he's
punch.
the inventor. He really sort of, in many respects, popularized the West Coast striper fishery. So we're really honored to be able to have him on the show.
And he also popularized using heavy sinking lines too. That was one of his big things. So yeah, it'll be very interesting.
And then, if David Nelson is sort of the king of artificial materials, synthetic materials for tying big flies, Brad Buzzy's kind of the king of the bucktail.
Yeah.
I know that when we had guys like Bob Popovics on, and certainly Jason and Johnny and all those folks, they all talked about Henry, their relationships with Brad. So we're super excited to get him on the show too.
Totally. Uh,
Um, and then March 25th, Nick Vlaos, who's an incredibly innovative tire from down in I think is he in Louisiana now? I
yeah,
think.
he's down there on the Gulf Coast, and he's a young kid, but he's a new up and comer. And boy, what he can do with little flies for sight fishing down there is incredible.
And David and I got into his stuff because we were both interested in finding imitations for mole crabs,
Yeah,
which are a huge forage crustacean for striped bass and other predatory fish up here in the
yeah,
Northeast. And more and more, and Nick really, I think you found him on Instagram. I don't
yeah.
remember even where I saw him, but his imitations of small crustaceans are second to none, and
His mole
many.
crab's amazing.
And he's really he's gotten a huge following up here in the Northeast now too, so we're excited to have him. And then we're closing out on April 8th with another OG, Nick Curcione, who literally wrote the book on saltwater fly fishing.
Yes, we have a lot of West Coast people. Am I allowed to say Californication? I don't know. We got a lot. We got a lot of West Coast, two OGs in there from the West Coast, and it's really exciting. Another little announcement. There it is. Is we have some really great swag this year. And ASGA, there's going to be some stuff given away tonight. But you want to put me on camera for a second, Lou? So Hardy has been nice enough to donate one of their Fortuna Regent 8000s, this very reel right here. Some lucky person. The drawing will be on the last show, and it's only for people who tune in. So tell your friends if they want to win this reel, they should tune in. But that's not all, Lou. Behind curtain number 2, we have a pile of Royal Wolf lines. 3 of them, in fact, floating, lost tip, and a 350 sinker. And if that's not good enough,
And by the way, those are David and my favorite lines right now.
they are amazing lines. I've been fishing with them for 20 years. And you know how we always refer to lines that annoy us that has memory like an elephant? This line has no memory whatsoever. I pull it off my reel after the winter and it's fishing great. And if that's not enough, I showed you this. This was a little hint. But we have from David Nelson and Squimfish a nice little care package of what is that right side up? A nice little care package of stuff that they'll be sending us that we can pass on to you folks for the drawing at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of pretty good stuff.
Yeah. And the way we're going to do this, just so you all know, is every show you attend this season, so there's 6 shows, you get a raffle ticket, and that increases your odds. And we'll do the ASGA stuff tonight for anyone. We'll do a random lottery. We have 2 hats to give out. And by the way, I love the ASGA hats.
They're
I wear
awesome.
them all the time. So we'll draw from folks who are in the Zoom tonight. But then at the last show, we'll do a drawing, and we'll put all the names in a hat, and you'll have as many names in the hat as you have attendance, sessions that you've attended,
Yeah.
and we'll give the prizes out that night. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
And
Um,
and 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 we're not done. We have a couple of other sponsors who will be coming on, but we'll have more about that um, later on.
Yeah, and
So
then just to close this out real fast so we can get to Tony and
yeah,
Cody, I want to just introduce our guests. I think most people here know the Saltwater Guides Association. They're really, God bless them. They are our advocacy group. They are our representatives in the fight out there for our fisheries and the fish that we love. And really, we're so honored to always be able to kick off our season with our friends at ASGA. We're joined by Cody Rubner, who's the communications and brand director, but the title doesn't do justice to everything that Cody does. Produces the Guidepost podcast, is an incredible guide himself, does all of the marketing and branding work for ASGA, and is just other than the fact that he's a Celtics fan, an all around really, really great guy. And then we have I'm going to
oh
embarrass
man,
Tony,
I can't believe you put that up.
the president, the head of the American Saltwater Guides Association, Tony Friedrich. And this is a picture of Tony and me when Tony invited me to go with him up to Capitol Hill to talk fisheries with our representatives on the Hill. And this was us being silly in the tunnels of Capitol Hill together. So thought I'd embarrass both of us by showing that photo.
Well, you achieved your goal there, Lou, for sure.
Cool, cool. So with that, Cody and Tony, if you can turn on your cameras, let's get going.
Let's get it up. There's Tony.
All right, Tony, I had to do it.
It says that you turned my camera off. I'm
Oh,
just
hold on one
assuming that's
second.
because the Celtics are better than the Knicks, but
Eat him, Ripper. Eat him right there. That's the one you want to eat.
Let's see. Okay, here we go. Ask to start video. So now you can click it, Cody. There we go.
okay, there we go.
Awesome.
Hey, Cody.
Welcome,
Hello,
guys.
hello.
Thank
Welcome,
you
Thanks for
for
having
buddy.
us.
being here. Thank you.
The pleasure is ours. You speak far too highly. We're just a couple knuckleheads who love what we love and don't like putting up with BS. So we do what we do.
Well, thank you. And I'll ask the first question right now, right out of the box, so we can get this out of the way. What happened with striped bass in 2025? What's the deal, guys?
Things are
Tony?
great. I don't know it. I don't know. Is there anything negative going on?
You know, a lot happened in 2025. Uh, really, the, I think the biggest thing for people, to kind of understand about what's going on with striped bass is it's it's pretty bleak with the spawning failures everywhere. Um, I the Hudson had a terrible spawn. It hasn't been announced yet, but we know it was the worst spawn on record,
Wow.
if what we're hearing is true. So our backs are kind of against the wall, and we have some dominant year classes that are still out there. The 11s, the 15s, the 18s, 17s. 17s and 18s not dominant, just average. But after that, there's really not a lot. And the way that they measure striped bass is based on weight, the SSB, the spawning stock biomass. It's not numbers of individuals, it's the weight in the population. So when you're in a situation like we're in, it probably paints a rosier picture than what the reality is, because those dominant year classes are getting older, gaining weight. They are part of the SSB. So, think about a 40-pound female and a 14-pound female, 13-pound female that just reached, 28, 29 inches. Um, that there's, it kind of artificially inflates the picture, but I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, they're not spawning anywhere else. They didn't move to Canada, and it's going to be, we're in the situation that we're in. What I will tell you is I live in between, to the south of me is the most prolific spawning river in the Chesapeake. If the chop tank is the bellwether, and if the chop tank has a great year and all the rest of the rivers fail, we'll have an average year. That's how powerful the chop tank is. Um, and north of me is the Chester, and that's another, not on the same scale as the chop tank, but that's another powerhouse river for spawning. And right now, y'all, we have a ton of snow. It's been 10 years since it's been this cold. We've gotten this much snow. Um, the bay's frozen to the bridge. The ice sheets just came into Eastern Bay where I live. If y'all are familiar with the area, Kent Narrows, it's kind of like a miniature Cape Cod canal. It cuts off Kent Island. Kent Island cuts the bay in half. And the water is just raging through there. It's not for the faint of heart to run through Kent Narrows on a strong tide. It's frozen. I mean, that water's moving at 7 knots easy when the tide's going consistently. And it's frozen. I wouldn't walk across it, but I'm just telling y'all that we're having a winter right now that we haven't had 10 years. So we're real hopeful that something good will happen this year. But what I will tell you is, two things. There's going to be two things that happen. We're either going to have a good spawn or a bad spawn. And if we have a good spawn, we have to protect those fish at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
Those fish have to make it to be adults and have to spawn and contribute. So that'd be number one. If we have a bad spawn, I think it should probably dawn on everyone that it's not water quality. It's not a plankton mismatch. It's not climate change. It is not, we killed too many damn fish.
Yeah.
And there is not a spawning recruitment relationship until the stock falls to a certain point, and then there is. So, fingers crossed, we are extremely hopeful that there will be a good spawn. And what happened this year with striped bass, really a lot of kicking the can down the road. I'll speak at the most recent, because we have an ASMFC meeting coming up next week, but there really isn't anything hot and heavy on the agenda. But I just want to frame this. So, we were supposed to take a 12.5% reduction. And then what was touted by the status quo crowd was, what do you mean? Everything's fine. We'll hit the target. We don't have to do anything. Look, management's working. Well, the dirty little secret that they didn't tell anyone, and we tried to tell everyone, what is that effort has fallen by 86%. Directed fishing trips for striped bass, 86% since the peak in 2006. That's why we could go status quo, because not many people are fishing. And you may be like, what do you mean? I went out and bought a such and such, and there were boats everywhere. Well, there's not any here. None.
I mean, I would
And a
say,
lot of other places, there's not anyone fishing like they used to.
I mean, I think David will back me up on this, but there were not a lot of boats fishing for striped bass, around the east end of Long Island either. I mean, shocking.
Right.
There were 20 times more boats in the season at the tuna grounds than there were at Montauk Point. And be
Yeah.
curious for others to put it in the chat what they found out there. But that was my observation too.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
what in a
we had,
fishery like striped bass, what makes you go fishing, right?
yeah,
Catching striped bass. So if you go, like Tony said too, maybe you cross paths on a day where you did see a little bit of activity, but if no one catches crap that day, you know, those people aren't going to come back. It's definitely it's a catch driven fishery. So if you're not hooking up, why would you go again? I think that's probably another big aspect there.
Yeah, I mean, we had this spring, um, there were virtually no stripers on the sand this spring, in shallow water. I really had to work hard to find them, and I'd have to kill everybody if I told them where they were. But um, uh, and then out of Montauk, um, we did not have the usual spring run we had. They were in for like a moon phase and a half, and then we had a little bit of weather, and that was it. You know, normally they come in the end of May at Montauk, and we'll have them right up through the first week of July. They were gone by mid-June. It was
Well, I
just
think the
over.
point is, I mean, I don't like hearing these stories, right?
Yeah.
I know the surf casters took it on the chin for
Oh yeah.
sure. But here's the thing, like I don't know how you can look yourself in the mirror and be like, well, we're gonna rebuild because nobody's fishing anymore because there aren't any fish. And it's just no one's being honest about what happens after 2029 because you're gonna fall off a cliff no matter what you do.
Mhm.
And again, they're not showing up anywhere. They're not mysteriously appearing in another part. They didn't move. They didn't. There are none. So we're all going to have to kind of deal with that. And and I think moving forward, you got the benchmark stock assessment in 2027. They initiated a work group, but I'll tell you right now, they're slow rolling the work group because what's going to happen is by the time the work group finishes talking till they're blue in the face, the stock assessment's going to be coming out.
Yeah.
So, I just we're we're in the game, and I'll talk about that more, but we have to hope and pray for a decent spawn this year, and and we just got to keep grinding every day.
And not
I
to,
think these fish are worth it.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I hope y'all do too.
Oh,
So,
well, we're all here because of that. Not to sort of cause you to break out in hives or trigger PTSD, but and maybe Cody, I'll throw this to you. Can you, so Tony said we quote kick the can down the road. So help me and others who kind of don't necessarily weren't as involved as you might have been. Like felt like this time last year we were talking about bad, spawns and stock assessments, and there was a lot of momentum behind taking action. Why and how did the can get kicked down the road?
Well, I mean, if you want to jump in with something really quick, actually, I probably have a slightly different perspective that I'll answer the same question. So if Tony wants to, Tony, throw one more thing in real quick, and then I'll piggyback right on top of it.
so the shit weasels in management at ASMFC decided to demonize catch and release fishermen, which, by the way, we're all catch and release fishermen. I don't care if you take a couple fish home, you're throwing a fish back, whether it's too big, too small. I don't care. We're all catch and release fishermen. So rather than look at the damage that they do to the resource, you know, they decided to demonize catch and release fishing. And that slowed the process down because now you're not talking about the issue. There's no striped bass. We're killing too many of them. You're just pointing fingers, and we got accused of separating you know, segregating the fishing community because of our crazy outlandish views. And we were like, dude, we're trying to address the situation. You're pointing the finger because you want to keep killing fish and you want to blame somebody. So it was always 9% mortality for striped bass. But then Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries did the most comprehensive catch and release study on any saltwater species ever, period, the end. And it's really about 4.5%. And I could get into how we got to the 9%. It's the most ridiculous thing. As God is my witness, y'all can all look this up right now. It's called the Diodati paper. Okay. And he was the old head of Mass DMF.
Yeah.
And he did research that was okay at the time in 1996. But at the bottom of this paper in big bold black letters. You can find the PDF online. It says "Do not use for management purposes." So, in the infinite wisdom of ASMFC, they used it for management purposes for 30 years. So,
His
Matt,
research was the one that said that
9%.
9%
100%.
mortality of caught
It's
fish.
actually our second to last blog, Tony, for anyone who wants to read up anymore. I think it's called Release Mortality Revisited or something very similar to that. People can find a little bit more hands-on in some of the graphs
So
from.
what they
Post
did
the link to the
was they
blog. Yeah.
they demonized catch and release fishing to take the spotlight off the problem. And then we had to hold the line on that for like a year and a half for the mass DMF study to get published, and now it's crickets because it's not our fault.
Mhm.
Matter of fact, for fly fishing, people who use single hooks with conventional gear, you're looking at a mortality of like 3.5%. 3.5%. If you take bait fishing out of it, it drops way below 4%, by the way. So um that's really why the can was kicked down the road. These people that are doing it are pretty nuanced in the process, and they're pretty good at slowing shit down. It's easy to slow something down. It's hard to solve a problem. So
Mhm.
they just want to slow stuff down so their small loudmouth constituents can keep killing fish. That's what slowed it down. So that's my opinion. Cody, what do you think?
Well, yeah. So Tony kind of just showed the chess match of what actually how it played out or how that split happened. Lou, from like a more of a higher level over the last couple of years, I think the reality is you're just running out of fat to trim, right? So you're running out of let's take this reduction, let's take this, and every year that you made some sort of positive reduction towards what is and isn't possible for total harvest, all of a sudden you're running out of that fat to trim. And we've reached a certain uncomfortable point where you're getting to really, really difficult conversations about what actually is left to do.
Mhm.
And people who view the fishery differently than many of us, I think, are running out of those options and kind of see the writing on the wall there. So what Tony just described was specifically within this last year how they mucked it up. You have the 27 benchmark lingering over us as well, that Tony talked about, the benchmark stock assessment, which makes things kind of uncomfortable as well because you're not going to see a really a significant or extreme management action right going into that. So you kind of have that lingering over you, hoping that it's going to guide, more positive management, but you know that there's this awkward little gap that we're stuck in. And from my perspective, Tony's our rain man when it comes to striped bass. He knows every river they spawned in and what music they were listening to when they did it, over the last 3 decades. But when I look at some of this stuff, I look at it from the human side, right? How do we keep people engaged? What do they need to know? What do they need to know about the process and what's changing and how they can be involved? And
Yeah.
in the, I don't even know how long now, 5.5, 6 years, Tony, something like that, that I've been working with ASGA, those first 3, 4 years, the ability to get people engaged was really tangible, Lou. Like this can happen and this could drive an X% reduction and you need to, call for option B, which is X. Very, very, very tangible.
Right.
And when people can see really significant progress or significant opportunity, I think they're very engaged. From my perspective of the type things that I deal with for ASGA, we've actually entered what I think is probably the most uncomfortable and difficult window, because we're in this weird gray area where there isn't a major significant change that is going to be logically on the table, whether or not all of us would like it right now, the way that the game is going to play out with 27 benchmark floating ahead of us and this split that we just had of this, demonizing and splitting the two, not only just the sectors, but then the fishing communities as well, and the whole no targeting versus no harvest deal. So it's been mucked up a lot, and we're in this awkward window where the biggest thing I can preach is like we need some sort of determination. You got to drum up the energy to stay engaged in this process while recognizing this is this weird little like almost soft point in the timeline
Yeah.
where
That's
I it it's really nice when we can do something on the advocacy side and say like, there's never a silver bullet, but here's the closest thing. If we could just do this, it would, X, Y, and Z, and all of a sudden there's a lot more fish in the water. And I don't think, Tony's always looking for those opportunities on the policy front. These are these major things that we can drive, but we're really in this kind of soft gray area that makes things a little bit uncomfortable. So Tony tapped a little bit into how we got there, but I think that's also why it feels that way, Lou, and where your question was kind of going. Like, how did we get here? It felt like the couple of years before this, like major things. We saw emergency action from ASMFC, right? Like, wasn't that a big win? Well, yes, it was a big win at that point. But as I talked about, we're just running out of that fat to trim. And now we've hit this really awkward window where I think we're just going to have to really, show a little grit and determination and survive this, knowing that, fingers crossed we get an incredible spawn. No one can ever say it's going to open up its own can of worms if we do, of how the heck do we protect these fish. But the end goal is more fish in the water. So if we get an incredible spawn, thank the heavens, that's what we've been waiting for. But until we get that, we just kind of have to stay the course and recognize that
That's
it's going to
listen,
split one of those two ways.
we have, you know what, that brought up a question from our audience, and I want to read it because I think it's people need to understand some things. Rob, I'm going to read your question. And Rob says, so what exactly are you saying? Do we recreational fishers, guides, and commercial fishers need to completely stop fishing for stripers in paren moratorium? Um, so what do you guys say to that? Because I think everyone's thinking the same thing right now.
Oh, you're
Tony,
on.
you're on mute. I mean,
I said, why
that's,
is everybody looking at me?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Looking
like
at both of
everybody.
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Yeah. Cody, say what? Yeah,
I
go.
was, I'm just speaking from the gut here. I mean, I think no one wants to, that's the big word, right? That's the four-letter word in the room when it comes to any of this stuff. And no one wants to throw that thing around. But I think the reality is you have to look at where this is going. Like, if we don't get a good spawn this year, when conditions look like they should be everything they should be, where is this going? Like, if we're not going to that point, and if that point is coming down the line, at one point do you just say like, okay, we need to get ahead of that? And then also, I just want to also throw out too as well, like just recognizing the different dynamics of a moratorium, right? Like, is there a harvest moratorium versus a full fishing moratorium for that fish, and recognizing what did work in the past, and that specifically being harvest, right? So, just talking about the clarification there, but also if you get a good spawn, this holy spawn, then maybe that word is coming off the table. And the whole goal is what can we do to protect all these fish who are going to start, streamlining into this conveyor belt of fish that go down the year classes over time. But if we don't get them, I mean, at what point does that word come in where it's like, okay, we're running out of options every year that we don't get more striped bass?
So let me ask a follow-up to that, or actually two follow-ups. So number one, I guess, is could one good spawn put us back on? It seems unlikely one good spawn would put us back on trajectory against the targets. But I'd love for you to speak to that. But number two, and maybe this is the larger question for those who are less familiar, again, like what is the four-letter word mora? What? How does the law actually work? Like, what is the timeline that we're backing ourselves into now? By at which point the kind of the hand is forced in terms of a moratorium.
The only thing that we have to, lead us in these decisions is looking at history. The history of the fishery, because specifically with striped bass, we've been down this road before. So Lou, yeah, it wasn't even a dominant year class. It was like below average, but okay. Um, that year class, when we went into the moratorium, the whole concept was to protect one year class.
Mm.
And that year class begat the 96 year class, the
Mm.
2000, those monster, where like everything came roaring back. Okay.
It's like
So
compound
again,
interest. You protect that one
Yeah.
class.
yeah. So let me just answer both your questions. So
Mhm.
again, looking at history, and then understanding the latest science that we have from mass DMF, and then understanding the difficulties in saying you can't fish, because that's never going to happen. They can't even count fish, much less enforce. They can't even catch poachers, much less, police. What are you fishing for? So, based on all of those things, that we had a no harvest moratorium in the 80s when things were far worse, and I was alive then. Um, and the fish came roaring back. We have science that says if you fish a certain way, with certain gear, you're very unlikely to kill a striper. And then you think of all the people who have tackle shops and rod companies and, all the economy, and are you really not hurting the fish that bad? I mean, a moratorium is a no harvest moratorium. That's it. And so to answer your question, like specifically the question from the attendee, if we don't have a good spawn this year, I don't think there's any other option. And if anyone's wondering, like, gee, why haven't these jokers called for a moratorium earlier? If you don't think that comes up in every conversation that we have with managers, but we have that 2027 benchmark stock assessment. That is like the big one. It's the perfect one. It's the one that comes every 5 years. And just you have to, it's the art of what is possible. And you can jump up and down and scream and you can be right and you can say moratorium, but until that 5-year benchmark comes out in 2027, there's no way you're going to have the votes to pass it. It's
Well,
not possible.
once that assessment comes out in 27, and is that at the end of 27 it comes
It'll
out?
be like mid 27. I mean,
Mid
they're working
27.
on it right now.
And it's assessment that is really of the 26.
Yeah, yeah. The terminal year will be 25.
25. Okay,
Yeah,
so that
they'll have 26 numbers in it, but yeah,
if that assessment, so my very simplistic understanding, but help me out here. If that assessment doesn't show that we have successfully somehow gotten back to thresholds or are on target, then the moratorium isn't that required by law? No.
it's not required. So
Right.
like and ASMFC doesn't have to abide by any laws. It's not a council. It's not under Magnuson. So, no. But what they say is you have to rebuild within 10 years. So the previous benchmark that came out in 2019 was that, the
Right.
fish were below the threshold. We
Right.
want to have the fish at target. The spawning stock biomass had fallen below target and below the threshold. So that means you have 10 years to rebuild it to target. So that's what we've been fighting for since 2019.
So it would be 2029 that it would have to.
2029. So the projections that we'll see in 2027 for 2029 will be fairly accurate. They're not, it's like a hurricane, right? Pretty freaking accurate 12 hours before it makes landfall. And like, I don't know if anyone paid attention to the snowstorm, but we went from 40 inches to 24 to 36 to 12 to it's going to miss us. It's going to be rain. You know what I mean? And like, you really didn't know until you woke up Monday morning what the hell happened. So, but the closer that you get to the actual event, the better the projections are. So I think, unfortunately, what people have to understand is this is a multi-billion-dollar industry and there's a lot of forces at play. And there's the right thing and the thing that in your heart, and you'll never meet a bigger bunch of idealistic fools than me and Cody and the rest of the team. And we want it as bad as you could possibly imagine. But you also have to understand, timelines and process and the information that you have to make such a huge decision. And we're not going to have that firepower until the 2027 benchmark comes out.
And then even then, it's 29 is really when
Even then, 29, yeah.
do another assessment in 29. That's the sort of
No, so they do updates to the benchmark, but the benchmark is every 5 years.
okay. Okay. But they would have to make a decision in 29 as to what action to take, right? That's 10 years from
Well,
the
they're going to know when that benchmark comes out middle 2027,
they'll know.
they are going to know if they're going to hit on the trajectory that we're on right now, are they going to rebuild? And if not, what changes do we have to make?
Mhm.
But I think the discussion, if we have another bad spawn, the discussion is going to come up like we have to do more. Like, let's stop focusing on 2029, because again, that's based on weight, little misleading, and we have to look at the reality of, now that would be 7 failed spawns. So it's like,
Yeah. Right.
And this leads perfectly into what I said a second ago, Lou, which is like I know someone in here heard that and is thinking like, oh, so I'm just screwed for the next couple of years, right? So like, why does this even matter? And so that's where it gets really scary from the advocacy side, right? Is like, how do we keep people engaged and fired up? And the best perspective to look at this is there's two things that I think are worthy. One is track record. When you get to these really difficult decisions, how does it look if over the last X amount of years, every year, the amount of comments, the amount of people who are engaged and inspired kept growing, and it was louder and louder, and the voting between a specific decision, that was more and more of a landslide every year. That builds up into giving certain decision makers who are going to lead the charge for us when these conversations come up. Okay, well, let's look at the track record of the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. That's one thing, is we have to keep the track record going. And the other thing too is like if you lose any little thing along the way, that could just lead to less fish in the water. So you have to look at it as like, in the end, more fish in the water is always going to be the best option. Because even if we get to the point where, okay, there's a vote and boom, a moratorium starts tomorrow, and whatever year that happens in the future, at that point, when you're setting that, wouldn't you still want as many fish in the water as possible? So if there's an opportunity for a small reduction or certain specific things to change between now and then, if you're an idealist like Tony was talking about, like if you can have that optimist and glass half full mentality, every little thing we win along the way is more fish in the water when we get to a point where a decision is made of like, okay, now here's the point where we're going to wipe the whiteboard clean and restart and refresh this thing. So when we get to that point, those two perspectives, I hope someone who maybe is a little doubtful, can channel one of those two and realize, yeah, I might not see a massive change to this thing, the fairy tale Disney ending that I'm looking for in the next 18 months, but I can find ways to keep showing up and keep hitting those little benchmarks along the way until we get to very literally the benchmark stock assessment.
Got it. And
So
I want to
yeah.
come back to that
Oh,
question of what folks can do to I love the way you phrase this, Cody, because when there's a specific measure and you're asked to vote for A or B, it's a lot easier than when we're in this gray area. And so I want to come back to that in a second, but just to get to another question here from Dave, who is and this is, it's tough because I don't want to I want to resist casting it as, one side versus another, but it feels like there's some really conflicting interests at play here. And Dave gets at this, I think, in an interesting way. He said, it seems we can reframe this management disagreement. In addition to recreational versus commercial, it seems to come down to long-term versus short-term goals for the fishery. Do you have the impression that commercial fishing companies are not believing the assessments, or are they okay with harvesting all they can now, even if they're cut off in 2029? It's interesting. Tony, we've talked about this.
yeah.
What do you think?
A lot.
so I'm going to use oysters and crabs instead of talking about striped bass. So right now in Maryland, there was a massive federal raid in the recent past that you haven't heard about with the oyster and the blue crab buyers. And we knew something was going on because our boys in Louisiana and South Carolina were saying, man, all these trucks from Maryland are coming down and they're paying pennies for our blue crabs. And I said, really? They said, yeah, man, our crabbers are so pissed they're throwing their crabs back in the water. They're not even crabbing. Can't even get any money for them. And I said, well, that's something because they're charging $150 a dozen for number ones up here.
Hmm.
And they're like, get the fuck, that's more expensive. I said, dude, I'm telling you, I wouldn't go to a crab restaurant, put a gun to my head. It's ridiculous what they're charging. Well, the buyers were colluding on price fixing.
Wow.
And they were just raided by federal agents. They had their computers, their phones taken, everything. So the reason why I'm telling that story is that there's a long history that not a lot of people know about with striped bass commercial fishing. Long. And I could tell you every scam in the book, every single one. Some of them are still going. And I am not painting a picture that recreational fishermen are perfect and do not poach. And I report the poachers, report what you see. Like we have to hold ourselves, we have to clean up our own house first before you start trashing somebody else's. However, um, there is a massive good old boy network. The states don't have the money for enforcement. The Coast Guard doesn't really get involved because they deal with federal water mostly. You're not allowed to fish for stripers in federal water. And then, I'll just put it to you this way. I had a professor in college who was a retired detective from New York City. And he's one of my economics professors. And I said to him, I said, man, you got to tell me, like, what's a perfect crime? Without missing a beat, he didn't even know I like to fish. I was just one of his students. And he turned around, he said, hijack an 18-wheeler of frozen seafood.
Wow.
He goes, there's no barcodes, there's no scanners, there's no trace. He's like, in every single restaurant, if you're in New York, you pull up in the alley, every single restaurant will buy it for cash. So you save money. So it is it is so easy. So easy. And it's almost, I'd liken it to like steroids in baseball, years ago, where if you weren't doing steroids, you weren't getting the contract. It's almost like you had to do it because everybody else was doing it. And I think there's a lot of truth in that.
So, moving forward, what's an angler to do moving into 2026? I mean, what can people do to help?
I'm 53 years old. I never heard anybody say a year like that in my life. Is that
20
like, has anybody else, did you
2026.
just
Okay.
make that up?
Yes, Tony, I made just for you so you could say that.
Is that right after Y2K? Or
Yeah,
I was
It's like
five at the
Y2K,
time,
but
but
2026. But
yeah.
but
In
as
the
we
year of our
discussed,
Lord 1972.
well, I wanted to be precise, but more importantly, so what's an angler to do? I mean, we've talked about what happened in 2025. See, I didn't say 2025. We talked about, we've talked about how the can was kicked down the road. Let's flip it over now. What can we do? What can we do to have a positive impact on things moving forward?
Let's talk about some positive stuff, Cody, because it ain't all bad. We're gonna
well,
hop
so
off stripers for a second, though.
well,
So,
no, well, I think David was asking on the. Were you asking on the striped
Yeah,
bass front
specifically on the
specifically?
stuff before we
Yeah,
move on to like Albies and Bonito and stuff like
yeah.
that.
Well, so I have one thing. It's really not going to be fun. Someone's probably hoping I'm going to say like, here's an event and show up and wear this. No, but like the one thing I've been preaching to Tony lately is trying to inspire people to be brokers of honest conversation. And what I mean by that is we try our best. One of the really difficult parts with the communications coming out of ASGA is everyone's joining the conversation at a different point. So maybe Lou's been listening for 3 years, and David's been involved in this for 10, and someone else, literally, this is their first time listening to ASGA. And when we started talking about benchmark stock assessments, they're like, I don't know what's going on, and they, close the Zoom, right? So we try to build these resources. We try to put out stuff that's entry level, that you can learn the basics while also, staying up to date on the latest. And when you get in these like gray area gaps, one of the really important things I think people can do is educate themselves, learning from, I'm going to throw out generic stuff, but like Tony said, the stripers didn't go to Canada. Okay, well, what does that mean? I'm going to learn about that. Or how the heck are fish counted? I'm going to learn about that. And then when you see conversations going on, that could be at the bar, at the fly shop, on a rock while you're fishing and you cross paths with someone, or it could be on Facebook or Instagram, and I know social media conversations. Trust me, I moderate them professionally, and it's it's a nightmare, right? But having the courage to broker an honest conversation, and it doesn't always have to be combative, but to be, hey, Lou, I saw that you said that, all of them went to Canada and that's what's going on. Did you know that there's been DNA research done and it's basically, there's distinct stocks in Canada within the specific rivers, but they see very little mixing. So while maybe I don't know the right answer of exactly what's happening, I just wanted to put out there that's not true. But those little things, if you have thousands of people who care about striped bass and just have their little talking points they're confident in, all of a sudden you actually start to get some educated truth spreading. And we all know how, like, we don't even have to get partisan or bipartisan or anything in the media. Like, look at AI and log in, and I could see, Lu Yen in a Celtics jersey on Twitter, and I could believe he finally is cheering for a real team.
That never
But you
happened.
can't trust everything, right? Like,
Yeah.
trust of data, trust of what you're consuming digitally or whatever is definitely at an all-time low, or getting harder for people to consume. So a big role we can all play is just be brokers of honest conversation. When you're sitting around, educate yourself on what there is to know now before we get to these major points again, and then get people involved, get someone who doesn't know all these different things. Because when we get to a 20, late 26 or a late 27, and we get to a major decision point, it's a lot easier to get 10,000 comments in if 10,000 people are educated and care. If only
Yeah.
5,000 people are educated and care, you're not going to get 10,000 comments. So that's my personal thing right now, is trying to continue to put stuff out that allows people to get educated, and then give them the confidence to go have difficult or even casual conversations about what's going on here.
Yeah. So education obviously is the key, to be respectful when you're speaking to people either at the bar or on the rock, and try to make your point without being offensive, and then and give people the resources they need.
Cody, you taking notes? Or
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So while I'm
And
speaking
let's
to our
also
audience,
throw
so
out, it's okay to get emotional sometimes too. We all love about this. And if people heard my public comment in October, maybe it's different than my one I gave in July.
and
But
Cody,
yes, try your best.
I'm so glad I went after you in October. Um, so so
Well,
yeah, so give people the resources they need, so they just don't have to hear it from you, but they can read it and use their own critical thinking skills to actually absorb this
So
information.
I mean, I think one of the things that we do consistently on every species is we put the information out there and say, make up your own damn mind.
Yep.
This is where we're at and why. I
Yeah.
mean, we organize every podcast, blog, every, like, look, this is what happened. This is what we know. This is what we don't know. Because of all these things, this is our position, but take the information, do whatever you want. You don't have to agree with us on everything. But as long as you're reading our stuff, you're elevating yourself. Like, rising tide raises all ships. And you may not come to the exact, because all this stuff is nuanced. You may say, I like B1 instead of B2 because I want to go back to 1 at 36 where, you guys were this and that. Like, okay, man, that's fine. But we did our job because you know a lot more than you did before you listened or read our stuff. So we're okay with that. Like, it's not, we don't, it's not like we demand lockstep, you know, cohesion with it's not possible. Our goal is to create, especially with striped bass, the most educated recreational community on earth. Or saltwater, at least we got a long way to go with some of the trout guys, but really, like, that's really our goal, because if we can do that, everyone's going to come to a conclusion that's pretty close to ours. I bet you, because we're just like you. We're regular. I mean, salt of
One
the
of the
earth.
best ways, if you're trying to become a communicator on a topic, is if you have an uncomfortable conversation with someone who doesn't view the same. If four of us all sit around and it's all catch and release only fly guys, and you're talking about what you think about striped bass, there's not as much of that dynamic of having to be able to, oh, well, I think this, and someone challenges you and be like, oh, well, hold on, how can I back up what I have to say? And so sometimes those uncomfortable conversations can push you to research and learn the things that maybe you don't know or that you have to back up as well. So just don't be afraid to have those conversations. Like Tony said, it's funny, in the policy space, I've seen or noticed, I've sometimes had way more productive conversations with people who don't view the world the same way I do. And I can actually understand and recognize this is how they grew up. This is what they do for work. I see why they feel that way. It's usually the people who are like just on the sidelines mucking it up that upset us and draw out maybe the less PC or respectful side. But you can have those difficult conversations and really grow a lot as an advocate.
I think one of the things of who we are is, like, if you don't like the way that we're talking to you, we're a mirror reflection of how you talk to us. If you come and you have an honest question and you want to have civil discourse, We'll talk to you until the cows come home. If you come in, say we're stupid for something or, criticize the association or just take a cheap shot, buckle up, Buttercup. It's 2026. I'm gonna
That's
make you look
2026, by the way.
yeah, it's 2026. We're gonna make you look like a fool. You don't know as much as us. We're gonna come after you and we're gonna grind you into sand.
Well, isn't that
And
Cody
that's
in the October meeting?
it's
Hey, that was
gotten a
one
lot worse
time.
since then.
It was one
So look,
time.
let's kind of pop it out of stripers for a second
Yeah.
because there is actually some good stuff. So a couple weeks ago, we had in 2025 actually. We had North Carolina and Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries adopt regulations for albies and bonito. This is a huge concern of ours because there are growing fisheries for them, um, and substantial. Um, Cody could tell you how many they kill in Florida for belly strips for bait. It's unbelievable. Thousands of pounds per boat per day. Every Florida guide's complaining of the lack of albies.
And I just
Um,
want to throw in real quick. I'm gonna for maybe anyone who's listening isn't aware of the Albie project. The research we did over a 3-4 year window. We documented that the albies that you're chasing, they're a little bit more green and they're acting a lot more finicky when they're running around the Cape and Islands or around New York. But those are the exact same fish that pop up. We had fish basically they're swimming so fast that at least the data looks like with the acoustic tags that they swim in a straight line, basically from Massachusetts to Florida. And some of them are going from Massachusetts all the way down to the Florida Keys and all the way back in a calendar year, pretty like nonstop swimming. And as we know, they don't swim in a straight line. So when Tony called that out, I wanted to make that statement so people may be aware if they didn't know that that data has come up. But yeah, like I mean, the commercial guys down here figured out how to live chum them. So they take out, small pilchers, kind of the light tackle and fly guide tricks are the ways to, keep action going around the boat. And they can kill at basically it's a limitless fishery in Florida. So this connected coast has some really this significant implications between the different states that Tony is going to keep talking about, and it's largely because of how we've documented these are the exact same fish. I just wanted to throw
well,
that in there.
yeah, I appreciate that, Cody. So look, here's the bottom line. When you see less bluefish and the striped bass population is on the decline, I don't think anyone's going to argue about that. And the effort goes to something else. So if you go and you look at the cap tree party boats and you go back to like Octoberish, they were marketing pelagic trips in the wind farms, and a couple of boats were killing 1,000 bonito a day.
Wow.
Well,
And I was watching that on social media, gagging. And that's to me, that's wanton waste. Period. Hard stop. Oop, hard stop. Edit that out before it goes on YouTube, guys.
So,
So when other species decline, more effort gets put on these fish. And when there's something with no regulations, we have to do what we have to do to keep people in business, keep the economy thriving, keep kids fishing, everything that's it. There has to be fish in the water. Cody kept saying it again and again. Fish are more valuable in the water. The fish that we fish for are more valuable in the water. They are. And all we want is guardrail regulations. And we have spent years doing this research, years. I can't untold thousands of hours, up to $300,000. That's how much these tags, this research, it's insane. You wouldn't believe it. Um, all to be able to put it on the desk of a manager and say, this is why these fish need to be managed. 800,000 trips in 2024 coastwide just for false albacore.
mm,
wow.
I mean, right under 1 million and no limits, no limits. And the fish has a price tag on its head. It is a very valuable fish when it comes to belly strips, and there's actually a pretty big market for them in Asian grocery stores. So,
Yeah.
Lou sent me pictures of them in New York,
yeah.
all
I
sitting
think
on
David
ice.
sent it to me. I sent it to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, David,
I'll tell you a funny story.
well, hold on, wait. I
Yeah.
got good news, David. Wait, let's go down your story lane in 1 second.
Okay.
So we got Massachusetts with regulations. We got North Carolina with regulations. We got Rhode Island, who just had their state hearing.
Right.
Overwhelmingly, we supported regulations. and they're going to have a larger public hearing on the proposed regulations. They're probably going to mimic the ones from Massachusetts. Connecticut has this on the docket. They're working on their regulations. New York, it's a little bit more difficult in New York. It has to go through the state legislature right now. It's not just like the state agency can change the regulations like in Massachusetts or Rhode Island. So it's a little bit of a longer process, but we're digging in New York. Once we get those states, we're going to pop down and we're going to dig in Florida, and we're going to get some, and that's going to be one hell of a, that's going to be like the final fight scene in Blazing Saddles, I think. Just where it's just like it's just gonna spill over. You're just gonna see me and Cody just like fighting on the floor of the Florida Senate, right? So that's good news. That's stuff that a lot of y'all, I mean, there's still 60 something of y'all online. That is stuff that y'all have read about if you know us. Maybe some of y'all donated to it. Maybe you bought a shirt. Maybe you bought one of the Albie Ultimate Rod and Reel, packs that we sold, and like you're a part of that. You made a difference from nothing to a 5 fish limit and making sure that these fish are around. And then on top of that, having a massive body of scientific work that we will have in perpetuity to understand these fish better. I mean, thank you. Because a lot of times we feel like we're yelling into a bucket, but like if you feel like the system doesn't work and your voice doesn't matter, well, I mean, we're marching up and down the coast and getting this done for all of y'all. And like I said, a lot of y'all are coming along with us.
Yeah.
So just pay attention to like our blogs, our podcasts, social media, all that kind of all the media that we do, because we will tell you when these meetings are. And y'all are so important. I mean, just if 20, 30 people in these meetings will overwhelm a state agency.
Yeah.
I think
And
there's
we're
two
we're
two
winning.
quick conceptual things that are really profound just for people who might not recognize, but what Tony just described, this progress, this is a shift in mindset that has not been seen anywhere in management. So it's always reactionary. We killed them all, there's two left. Now what do we do? That's reactionary. Saying, man, there's 100 of them left, but I really enjoy them. So can we like make sure we never go below 50? That's precautionary management, and that's almost never seen because it takes a lot of courage to tell people, hey, we're going to set these now before things get really bad. And so that's a really profound management shift, and I really want people to recognize like you're you're not only making a small win for false albacore, but you're starting to lay the groundwork for how fisheries management could be looked at a lot more differently going forward too.
Every one of these wins sets a precedent. And Lou, I want to tell, so we're going to have a lot of meetings coming up. Rhode Island, Connecticut, a little bit faster than New York. We're going to need all your voices. We will get the information out ahead of time. We have a Menhaden issue in the Gulf. They want to pull these buffer zones back, and I will just direct you to our podcasts and our positions on, because it is very nuanced. I know probably not many, if any of you are from the Gulf, but take a listen to the podcast I did with Mario and Bailey, two locals down there that know their stuff. Um, they're managing the Menhaden fishery in the Gulf on how many fish a factory can process. That is it. That
Wow.
is all that you need to know. We're doing everything that we can to change that. Our voice is getting louder, but that is also next week. Um, and I want to tell you like a good story. Like we're on good stuff. So there's a ton of stuff across multiple coasts. Jack Creval's going great. The Albie project's winding down. We're actually the technology on the tags has improved since we started
Oh, that's interesting.
the Albie project. So we were really concerned because we had a couple of people that were just nonstop, like, you should do bonito, you should do bonito. And we're like, look, there's a reason we're starting with Albies. Just trust us. And the reason is, bonito are a little bit more delicate and they're a little bit smaller, and putting those tags in them could hurt them pretty bad. And then having an external telemetry tag, that's a big drag on a fish. So that, they weren't even big enough. You'd have to catch the giant bonitos to do that. Well, the technology improved a little bit. So this year we'll probably put out somewhere to like 60 to 100 bonito tags in North Carolina, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and I think Connecticut.
Hmm.
But probably
Yeah.
somewhere in that Nantucket array where we were doing all the albies in there as well. So we want to get all the data on them. So that's something to be excited about.
That's great.
That's really good.
We're in two more things. I swear to God, I just got to get this out because we yapped about
That's great.
stripers too long.
Tony's never positive. Please let this happen. Let it keep going. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
dude.
I'm
Let me
enjoying
roll.
this.
Shut up, Blinken. So look,
Oh, me. That was
yeah,
Cody.
I'm just blaming you, man.
Um,
So, Bonito project's going to launch. We have two other projects that we're looking at that are totally preliminary. We haven't signed any contracts yet. Um, One of them is, I think, in the 99 percentile that it's going to happen. So we are going to replicate the mass DMF study for catch and release mortality on striped bass in the
Right.
Chesapeake Bay. We have a great team of researchers. We have initial funding for it through a very an awesome group of people who care a lot about striped bass. That'll start in the fall of 2026. And then Cody and a lot of our guides down in Florida are having some snook issues, and there's a lot of answers that need to be questioned. So right now we are talking with the same researchers who are doing our jack work, and we're trying to figure out, what is the best question to answer. You got 10 issues with snook science. What are the top three that we could accomplish that could make the best difference? So we're eyeballing that, but that's even more preliminary. And I got one story to say. I'm not going to say what state it is. We have a call with them tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning. And for those of y'all that love redfish, I absolutely love redfish. I in different areas of the country, they're viewed different ways, but my gosh, like they're just, to me, they're just a battle tank of a fish, and they can be really stupid and they can be really smart, and you can catch them a million different ways, and I love them. And they pull like a pit bull on crack. Um, so uh we were really disappointed in the decisions that were made in the Atlantic in November. They kind of sold redfish down the river. It was really not a good meeting. It was unbelievable the decisions that they made, and we really pressed a couple of states that we knew were conservation minded and kind of got swept up in the BS. And one state is going to go above and beyond, and they're going to put some regulations in
right.
that not only are they going to lower, not they're going to lower the creel limit, they're going to tighten the slot, make the bottom end of the slot a little bit higher. And two things that they're going to do that are going to be profound is you're not in this state that I'm not going to mention, you're not going to be allowed to take, and it's on the Atlantic, it's not in the Gulf. You're not going to be able to take a redfish over 34 inches out of the water.
Bravo.
Yeah.
If you fish with bait for the old drum, the big drum, you have to use a fixed weight with a short leader and a circle hook. Because those fish finder rigs, they'll take it, run, swallow it. Redfish biology is really weird. Their heart is actually just right behind their crusher in their jaw. So they're really susceptible to a bad hook hitting an artery. And that's what causes a lot of mortality in redfish. I mean, look, I've caught a redfish. I mean, I think Cody's caught one that has their tail bit off to their anal vent, and it just looks like it's scarred over, and it looks like a totally healthy fish. And you're just like, my God, these things are like battle tanks compared to stripers. But they have that one kind of little kryptonite weak spot, so they're trying to this state is trying to address that. So we went from like a nightmare scenario to a state stepping up and saying, no way, we're not gonna. My legacy is not going to be redfish are gone. and coming up with these incredible regulations. And I'll close it off with this. What Cody and I have been saying all along, like, you got to be in the arena.
Mhm.
Yeah, you have to be like in the dust, the blood, the sweat, the tears, and just every day. And then when stuff like this happens, you think you're lucky, but it's really opportunity that you created by staying in the process. So and this is, if this decision goes through, which we think it will, or I wouldn't be talking about it, this is going to be leverage for every other state with redfish.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like this little bright light that we can, just like albies, we can get the ball rolling in one place and it'll catch fire everywhere else. So I think that story has a lot of crossover to striped bass. I'll tell you one other thing. Another thing to be really happy about is the leadership at ASMFC has rolled over. They have the staff that they have, but then they also have like a chairman, an appointed chairman, a chairman of this board, a chairman of ASMFC, a chairman of that board. So the new chairman of the Striped Bass Management Board, the previous one was Marty Gary, who was a very good friend of mine, and I think the world of. And I've known Marty for close to 30 years. And if you go through every single one of our blogs, we have never said a bad word about that man. His heart is in the right place, and he's a good person, and he really did the best he could as chairman of the Striped Bass Management Board. And we have really, I would consider like a conservation hero, Chris Bat Savage from North Carolina, coming in hot. He's the new chairman of the Striped Bass Management Board, and
That's
he's
great.
the guy. He is the guy that we want in the seat. And then the whole chairman of ASMFC, the previous chairman was Joe Cimino, from New Jersey, and I'll just leave it at that. New Jersey. Sorry
Okay.
for anyone. I'm talking about fisheries managers from New Jersey, not
Enough
people from
said.
New.
Enough
Your
said, Tony.
your pizza is lovely. I love, and your sandwiches are so much better than ours in Maryland. It's not even. I will drive to Southern New Jersey just to get a sandwich. So, but your fisheries leadership sucks. And Joe Cimino was chairman of ASMFC, and when you're chairman of ASMFC, different things get on the agenda, different things get a focus. Um, and now we have Dan McKiernan from Mass DMF,
Yeah.
and Dan's just like, I would just say Dan is just kind of like a Massachusetts Irishman who came from a very big family, who's my age, probably mid 50s, and is uh a great leader who doesn't take a lot of shit. Just a Boston Irishman who had like seven brothers and sisters and they fought to the death over cereal. You know what I mean? It's that kind of like, and he brings that to kind of like everyday work. So we're real happy that Dan is the chairman. So there's a lot of the chessboard is set. There are a lot of good things that we can capitalize on. So there is a lot of hope in the future.
So
Good.
advocacy works, right? And this is
Yeah.
not a all or nothing game. This is lots of small battles that add up when you can start piling up wins, it sounds
Yeah.
Well,
like.
Tony must love Masters of the Fly because I was told not to talk about either of those research projects or the upcoming state decision. And y'all just got the full scoop. So
You got
whoever's
the
still
scoop.
Well,
tuning in
except
here,
Love
except
it.
well, except he did name names on the states. But Tony, uh,
We
be-
got the money for the striper thing, so like there's no point in not, you know what I mean?
before we sign off, because
And if anyone wants to donate to the Snook project that might not happen, it's
okay,
Tony at saltwaterguidesassociation.org if you like Snook.
yeah,
Save a Snook for Cody.
Love it.
okay, but before we have to go soon, but there's a couple of questions that popped up, but before that, I wanted to tell you the funny thing about the picture I took of the albie that Lou sent you. I was in the Chinese food market and I'm taking a picture, and he put a sign up. There was a sign on the albies that said bonito, and I walked up to the Chinese fish market
In
guy.
Chinatown.
I said, in Chinatown, I said, that's a false albacore. You can't sell it as a bonito. He put his hands on my shoulder and showed me the door. but I got the picture quickly along with the bonito sign.
You're lucky that's all you got.
Yeah,
I was gonna say you should bring
yeah,
Lou with you to find out what he was saying about you.
Exactly. Right. And
it was pretty. It was pretty funny.
what he put
But
in your chow fun.
Scott Worth asked a question. I don't know how we're going to answer this, or you guys are going to, but can you guys give some opinion on what drove the Albie season this year versus last? Because we really haven't had a good Albie season in Long Island for 3 4 years, and this year until the first big October storm came, we had a pretty robust Albie season. I mean, I can tell you what I saw personally on the water, which was the most bay anchovies I've seen in about 10 years, and that could have driven it. But maybe you guys have another opinion about that.
Well, there's an
Yeah.
interesting thing on the data side, Tony, that one thing that came out of the Albi project was um, there were arrays further offshore that we were in tune with, and some of the data that we saw was like the when you have the same day where it's like the inshore guys are going, there's no albies around. You know, I've been running up and down the coast. I've checked all my spots in the boat. There's nothing. There's none inshore. And then you have the offshore guys complaining like, man, those things you're saying that, you know, we need to protect them. They're everywhere. Every time I want to tuna, I'm getting an albie bite. I hate these darn things. And one of the things we saw, these fish are so fast and moving so quickly that those fish are the same fish. So
Right.
both people are having the same conversation and they're developing their own independent realities of what is going on. And those fish are on the move a lot. So when we documented that, I think there is a big dynamic at play at inshore versus offshore, what is and isn't driving. And maybe I have some assumptions that would be more guide and fishing specific and less, scientific about what is and isn't pulling them inshore. But I wanted to call that out as we really found a profound connection between how active these fish are, more so than you could have imagined. Like we're always used to how fast they're swimming and chasing
Yeah.
bait, but like no, the amount of miles these fish are covering in even a given day is pretty insane.
So one fish, our speedster, the fastest albie that we tagged out of 100 and something, swam from Nantucket Sound to the Dry Tortugas in 28 days.
Wow. That's
Jeez.
insane.
And eating
So
all the way.
yeah, so to get back to the question, about like what drove the albie season this year, you know, I think they have a preferred bait that they like to eat, and one of the top is bay anchovies. So I think where you saw big aggregations of bay anchovies, and that's true in North Carolina. They switched to pilchards, stuff like that in Florida, but those bay anchovies, like forget about it from North Carolina north. So I think that there's something to do with the overall lack of abundance of striped bass and bluefish in certain areas. And I think that, that bait is just happy and
Mhm.
it's not getting crushed every day. And all it takes is, a biomass of albies to move in. And, in a place like Long Island, it's not just bay anchovies. You have silver sides, sparings, sand eels, all stuff that like doesn't stand a chance against an albie. Um, you know, I think it has to do with bait aggregations,
Yep.
temperature, preferred temperature. And these fish, the migration is not east west, it's north south. So if the Albies bypass Long Island one year and set up in Martha's Vineyard, and that's where the bait is, Martha's Vineyard may just, I mean, Long Island may have a shitty year where they just get them coming and going and they don't plant there.
Mhm.
And I think this year they may have stayed in Long Island a little bit more to the detriment of Martha's Vineyard. But the bonita filled in
Mhm.
Martha's Vineyard for sure. So what we're noticing with the telemetry stuff, it's pretty freaking cool. And when we are allowed to post the data, we will. But so like they kind of hit a wall in Cape Cod, then they don't go any further north than that. But they'll hit Long Island, and some of them will go into the Sound, and some of them will stay in the ocean, and they just break off like it's wild and like just split right in half. But then those fish, when they get closer to New York City, they just shoot straight down.
That's
So
interesting.
it's almost like they bypass New Jersey, like inshore. Some very few of them do, but they go whoop right down to North Carolina.
Yeah.
And if you think about a fish that can go from Nantucket Sound to the Dry Tortugas in 28 days and it's not swimming in a straight line, to go from, southern Long Island to North Carolina, that's nothing for them. I'll tell you some other really cool stuff that we've seen is there is a lot of juvenile ones, like ones under 4 pounds
Hmm.
that are in like South Carolina, like Charleston Harbor.
Hmm.
So like that's a big fishery down there that nobody even really talks about. They go out with 6 weights.
Hmm.
There have been larvae captured in NOAA seine trawls off Florida. Cody sees habits of these giant albies that he gets. He tagged the biggest albie that we tagged. I think it was 34 at the fork.
Wow.
And they'll just poof, disappear.
Yeah.
And then poof, a week later, they're back in droves, but they're thinner. So like, where did they run out to spawn? Right. And there's things that we don't know yet. So Anthony just put up another question. Is there data on their release mortality? So yeah, we have it. The paper is in final peer review now. So I can't talk about it because that's not fair. I don't know if it's going to change, but what we found out was better than what we thought.
Mhm.
I'll leave it that way. It's not horrible. And we found out really important things like use a single hook. A treble hook on like an epoxy jig will shred an albie.
Well,
Ones
here's
that we
here's a good way to answer that, Tony, without getting into the actual peer review and some of the actual metrics that'll come back from that. The first or second year, I'm mixing one of these two up, but one of our years we tagged 60. God, I'm going to botch the data now. 62 or 64 albies, and like 58 of them pinged the entire or most of their entire battery life. So that's not a metric. That's not your catch and release metric. That's not how it works. Very like it's not as simple
But it's a
as that to
good
develop
proxy.
that.
Yeah.
But the fact that, we take so many of these dang things in the boat and they bleed everywhere and puke everywhere, and you're thinking you throw it, spike it back in, it drifts away for a second, and you're like,
Yeah.
man, that thing
And
was
I've been
probably a
on some
mud
of those
dart.
tagging trips. I mean, that it's a
Yeah.
lot more invasive than the normal catch and release situation. I mean, it's out of the water.
Exactly. So just
Hey,
that I felt like that's good perspective. That's not your release mortality percentage, your metric. But like for example, one year we did a batch of tagging and they all survived very well.
yeah. Guys, thank you so much. This has been
Yeah.
so enlightening tonight.
Special.
We want to get to everyone's questions, but we can't because we have a time constraint. But we have a couple of people who won some swag from you guys at the Guides Association, and like to say, Joanne Frengie, I probably really butchered your name, but you're one of our winners tonight, and Ken Holt, you're the other one. So congratulations on some swag from these guys. Uh, you guys should email us your address, and we'll forward it to everyone and
We'll
take
we'll we'll
care
probably
of
have your
everything.
emails. We
Yeah,
will email you folks.
yeah, we'll take care
Feel
of
free
that.
to whoop it up and tell your friends. We
Mhm.
and thank you to Cody and
Yeah,
Tony for making that available. We
yeah.
love
Of course.
that.
We
So
thank you
Yeah.
very much, and just want to just wrapping up, not just the shows into the future, but the information you guys give us will be on air on our YouTube channel, and tell your friends and neighbors and all the naysayers about striped bass numbers and what's going on with bonito and false albacore to tune in and listen to the show again, because we had a ton of really, really good information in tonight's show, and we really want to invite people to come back and re-listen to a lot of this conversation because it is very important.
yeah, I mean, and we've had really great, many of you have done that. Please go to the YouTube channel, like, subscribe to the videos. We've had like tens of thousands of views of past episodes, so including our previous ASGA sessions. So thank you for all that. I'm just putting up for anyone who wants any of the incredible access to the incredible research, resources, information from Saltwater Guides Association, you probably know their website already, but go there, subscribe. You'll get, they don't clutter your inbox. Cody's really good about that. They only send when something's important, but you get everything you need to stay in touch with what's going on. So scan the QR code with your phone or just go to the website. And that link down there is to donate. They are a 501c3 nonprofit. So every dollar you contribute is fully tax deductible. And
Yes.
I can't think of a better cause.
I
And
can't
Well,
either.
I'll throw in one real quick thing for anyone who felt like they had a question, didn't get it answered, or whatever. This is for everything that we have going on and how busy it might seem or unseem. We are very, very human organization. And if you have a specific question, you can email it to info@Saltwater Guides Association, go through the website, ask us on social media. We will literally go record a podcast specifically about your question. If someone's like, "Hey, I just don't understand these 5 things," we are very, very human. It's a small and mighty team behind the keyboards, behind the whatever, and we want to be very reachable. So,
And
if you
you might not agree with our conclusion, but I promise you, you'll know a lot more
Mhm.
about the details of your question after we answer it.
Yeah.
And I think I can safely say on behalf of everyone attending and the whole community of anglers that we represent, a huge thank you to you guys
Yeah.
and to Saltwater Guides Association. We haven't had advocates like you guys in the past, and over the last many years, you've just really done an unbelievable job at raising everyone's consciousness and driving the kind of policies that make a huge difference for us as fishermen. We don't win them all, but we win more of them than we lose because of you guys. So thank
And
Yeah,
the cool part is we're just
it's
getting
a
started.
marathon. Yeah, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we have to keep at it. Lou, let's pull up the screen again for all of us, the 4 of us.
you. Yep.
Just a reminder, everybody, that everybody who attends gets a shot at these great prizes. Wait, yeah, Squimfish, Royal Wolf Lines, in this Hardy uh, Fortuna Reef.
Fortuna. That's a badass reel, man. We put the
I'm
brakes
gonna
to
have to
some
call
40
Craig.
pound jacks.
I'm gonna have to call Craig. I hadn't got one of them for the Guides Association.
By the way,
Craig's getting a call tomorrow morning,
by the way,
8:30 a.m.
Craig told me you couldn't have it because he gave it to us to auction off. And I was with him.
Always a redheaded stepchild, Cody.
Hey,
So-
let me hype up a sponsor. So I actually got to test that Fortuna before it came out, and I had one of the staff members who's an old friend in the boat, and we were doing the 40-pound jacks, which is normally 11 weights, 12 weights, gear locked down, 60-pound bite. And he brought one of those, and he said, I think he only had a 9 at the time, and he's like, I kind of want to try the 9 on him, and I was like, there's no way in hell that I'm letting you throw a 9. This is an 11 and 12 game, and we beat the brakes off of those
Wow.
big jacks on the 9 before it even came out. So that is a bad
That is an
machine in your hand
endorsement.
right
he
there.
was
I love it.
he had this reel with him, and you guys also had the new what is it, the Marksman Z rod to go with this, I'm sure, because that's a killer stick.
A huge
But
thank you to Hardy and Pure for
yeah,
sponsoring, and Royal
yeah.
Wolf and Squimfish, and of course ASGA. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you for
Thank you
being
very
on
much.
here. Thank you, Tony and Cody.
Thanks for listening to us all this time, y'all. It warms our heart
Yeah.
for
Well,
y'all to care.
100%.
appreciate all
We
the.
appreciate y'all.
Thanks,
Take care,
everybody.
guys. Good night.
Cheers. Good night. Good night.